Hi everyone, welcome to the Practice Within podcast. I'm your host Amanda L, and today I am here to reintroduce myself. So it has been 2 years since I have landed into your podcast feed or on your YouTube channel as the Practice Within podcast. A lot has changed. A lot is continuing to change, and I thought it would be really good to just kind of settle into where we're at and give you an idea of where this podcast will be going in future episodes, because we are back and you can expect a new episode every Wednesday. And with that, let's get into it. So I have had a pretty crazy year, and as I say that, I think about how I could say that about every year for the past 5 years. But this year has been crazy in a positive way. And so basically some big things that have happened is I found homeopathy. And when that happens, it completely changed the stress levels in my life, because I was seeking out a homeopath for Lily. Lily is my dog. You will hear a lot about her. She is my entire world. Look at her. Amazing. If you're watching on YouTube, here she is. But not me. I guess I did. But Lily had a lot of fears, a lot of stresses, and it was a lot of irrational things. She was afraid of rain, cloudy days, weird things like that. And so when that happened, I would be stressed out because she wouldn't go to the bathroom. And it would be like over 24 hours, and she just would not go outside, or she would go outside and she would be terrified. And it was just really stressful for everybody involved when it would be raining outside or cloudy. And in Pennsylvania, that happens a lot. So we tried all kinds of stuff and none of it was working. And so I started to pursue homeopathy for her. And the shifts that we have seen are nothing short of amazing. They are absolutely amazing. She's not afraid of the rain anymore. She'll go outside. It's not a big deal. Other things that she used to be afraid of, she's not afraid. And it has just made life so much easier, and it has made me and her so much happier, because I see that she is not struggling with so much stress and anxiety anymore. So everybody's happier all around. But the way that I came to find homeopathy, which I knew about it, but somehow in my health journey, it's not something that I pursued. So I pursued so many different things on my own health journey and also in Lily's health journey, but homeopathy was never one of those things until this year. So this year, Mitch and I were driving home from across the state. So it was, 3 or 4 hours that we're driving. And so we put on a podcast, and I found this podcast, had it in my queue, and it was about homeopathy. That podcast just changed my life. He fell asleep. Mitch fell asleep. I'm driving, I'm listening, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is something that I need to pursue. I need to learn more about. I need to dive into. So that's how I got Lily a homeopath. That's how I got my own homeopath. That is how, very shortly after all of this happened, I signed up for homeopathy school. I went to homeopathy meetup. I was just like all in. And so this was in the spring. This happened earlier this spring. And now I've started school. I'm in homeopathy school. But before we get into that, 1 week after I signed up for homeopathy school, which is a big investment, it is, what is it? It is multiple thousands of dollars of an investment. Once I committed to that, I got fired from my job. My job of 5 years. Which I knew it was coming, and I was not the only one who was targeted in this circumstance. And I've never been fired from a job before. I believe I was wrongfully fired, but that's my personal opinion. Just due to the nature of things, they fired me, they set me free, and for the past 6 months, I've kind of been like, okay, now what? What do I do now? And I've been, trying these things, doing different things. I'm actually writing a book, which is something I'm pursuing. That's a whole other story. That's for a different day. But I knew that I had homeopathy school coming up, and that is ultimately what I want to be pursuing and what I want to step into. And so I've been in this limbo phase of like, what's going on? What am I doing? Which has ultimately brought me back to this podcast. But started homeopathy school in September. It has been a lot. It's very extensive. It is a 2-year program. I think it's like 4 years worth of work smashed into 2. Very hands-on and like a lot of work. But it has been really wonderful. I have not studied or been in school in this capacity for a really long time, and doing so has been very challenging for me in a very good way. And so that is happening in the spring. I will be taking cases. I will be receiving cases from people. So if you are interested in that, keep an eye out for that this spring. And everything is done under a supervisor. So it's not just me practicing on you. It is, but everything will be under a supervisor. So you will be able to get their guidance, but through me. So it's kind of a blend of me and them so that I can learn and then become a homeopath on my own in a few years. So that's something to keep an eye out for in the future if you are interested. But I've been pursuing homeopathy. I've been writing a book. I have been trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life, and everything that I always come back to surrounds health, because health has been my journey for a very long time. And I don't really think I realized it as I was going through like the bulk of it and until 2021. But before we get there, I'll just give you a little recap of my health journey, where I've been to where I am now. And you can kind of see what's going on. Maybe you've heard some of this before, maybe not, but I grew up very quote unquote normal. So I ate a standard American diet. I went to the doctor. My mom was a nurse. She worked in the doctor's office. I got all the flu shots. I got all the vaccines. I did all of the things. And I had a lot of digestive problems. From, I think it was around age 5 or 6 that I started to have a lot of digestive problems. And, I would be on a medication, it would work for a while, and then I wouldn't, and I would stop taking it. I had a lot of anxiety and stress, and I didn't even know that was a thing back then, but that was what I was feeling, that was what I was experiencing, and I didn't have words to put to what was going on. And so I didn't eat a single vegetable until I was 20 years old. And that is not an exaggeration. You can ask anybody in my family. I did not eat a vegetable until I was 20. I did not want any. I didn't like them. To me, a vegetable was like a can of green beans and then just heated up like in the microwave or on the stove and served on the table. Green beans or corn, like that, from a can, served. And no salt, no pepper, naked. I hated them. My parents tried to force me to eat them. My family tried to force me to eat them. I was not interested. I wanted the macaroni and cheese. I wanted the chicken nuggets. I wanted the sugary candies. I wanted anything but the healthy food. In 2013, I stumbled across a documentary, and that documentary is called Earthlings. And unless you want to torture yourself, I don't recommend watching it. But if you do not know where your food comes from, I recommend watching it. Because I watched that documentary really not knowing what I was getting into. And it changed my entire life. I went vegan basically overnight. So I went from eating, junk, processed stuff, to eating whole foods, plant-based diet. And I did this because back in 2013, there were not vegan Ben & Jerry options. There were not So Delicious dairy-free ice creams. There were a couple like fake meat options, but those grossed me out and they really sucked, like most fake meats do, in my opinion. There was no oat milk. There wasn't a lot of the options that we have today. And so I really didn't have a choice other than to eat whole foods. And that's what I did. And I did it because of the ethics behind the reason that I went vegan, which was for the ethics. So I went vegan and it changed my life. My digestion completely turned around for a couple of years. It was It was a really, really great experience. I know that everybody loves to hate on veganism, and sometimes I can do that as well, but it was such a positive experience for me, and I always will hold a special place in my heart for it, and I still have some of those ethics today, which I'm really, really grateful for. But I went vegan for about 5 years. For the last year, I knew that I wanted to and needed to reintroduce animal products, but that was a very daunting thing for me. And then eventually I did it. I chose to do that. I started with an egg, and it was like such a big deal. And if you're watching on the video, this is Molly. She is here to say hello. But I started with an egg, and then I slowly went with fish, and I really, really slowly started to reintroduce things. And I did this because I was struggling with Lyme disease. I was struggling with mystery symptoms and things that I just didn't really know what was going on. And I was seeing functional medicine doctors and different holistic practitioners, and nothing was working. And I was just feeling worse and having these flares and just really, really struggling. And that kind of ebbed and flowed. So sometimes I would be okay, other times I wouldn't. I would be on elimination diets, I would be on different protocols, and like things just were really, like I said, up and down, and I didn't know what was causing any of it. Fast forward to 2020, and my life completely blew up. My dog died unexpectedly. It was extremely traumatic. It was the first week of like the COVID shutdown stuff. Extremely awful, traumatic. It really, really messed me up for years, truly. That happened, and then the COVID stuff happened, which was a very stressful time for all of us. I had another death in the family around the same time, and it was just really rough. I was also looking for a house with my boyfriend. I was sleeping on a futon at my parents' house because we moved out of our rental because we were trying to buy a house, but they shut down real estate in Pennsylvania. And so we were kind of in limbo until real estate opened up again. Then it did. We finally found a house in October of 2020, put an offer in, it was accepted, and we moved in December. When we moved in, my parents and my sister were there to help us clean. My sister said, why don't we move out the fridge? Because the fridge came with the house. Why don't we move out the fridge and clean behind it? Because how often do you clean behind your fridge and like do that, you know? And so we're like, great idea. So we pull out the fridge, and that was the moment. There was an entire wall of mold. And if you're watching the YouTube video, this is the wall. This wall, I'm not kidding if you're listening, the entire wall was covered in mold. I started to panic because I saw people online at that point who struggled with toxic mold. I didn't really know the extent of things. I didn't know a ton about it. I just knew it was bad. And so somebody recommended, let's just spray it with bleach. We'll let it sit overnight. We'll come back tomorrow, clean it up, move on. Me, not knowing any different, was like, okay, let's do that. So that's what we did. And now I know, and I will tell you right now, do not use bleach on mold. I don't care what anything on the internet, I don't care what your contractor says, I don't care what your grandpa says, I don't care what anybody says. Do not use bleach on mold. Got it? Don't do it. So that's what we did though. Didn't know any better, used bleach. We moved the fridge back, moved all of my belongings, all of my boyfriend's belongings into the house. It was around Christmas time, so I stayed there for a couple of nights, went back home for Christmas, went back to the mold home after Christmas, then I left for New Year's again, then I came back after New Year's. It was about a week before I started to feel some really weird symptoms. I thought I had COVID, and I didn't have COVID yet at that point. And it still didn't have COVID for another year after that. So it was like 2 years after COVID happened that I got COVID. But anyways, so I thought I had COVID. And then I realized that when I would leave the house, I would be better. And so I was like convinced that this house was causing me problems. Very quickly, I started to go downhill because my boyfriend was having no symptoms in the house. My parents would come over, my sister would come over. Nobody else had any symptoms in the house. And so if nobody else is having any symptoms, then it must not be the house. It must be me. I must be the crazy hypochondriac, you know? So I started to go very, very quickly downhill with my health. I was sleeping 1 to 2 hours a night. I literally was on the verge of going crazy. I was afraid to leave Molly, who you saw, and Lily in the house by themselves when I would go get groceries. My boyfriend at the time, he worked away, so there were stretches of time where I was living alone, essentially. And there were times when I would pack Lily and Molly up and make them sit inside of the car at the grocery store whenever I had to leave the house. And I would rush around the grocery store and get everything as quickly as I could because I was so afraid of leaving them alone in that house. And also Molly's a cat, so she doesn't like to travel. And so she hated to sit in the car at the grocery store. So that was like a weird symptom that I was experiencing. And then I also, anytime the heat would come on, I would have to run outside because I couldn't breathe and I would try to catch my breath outside. So I had tons of shortness of breath. And this was in the middle of January, so like the heat was coming on. It was unavoidable at that point. I had a lot of digestive problems, super duper bad brain fog where I felt like I was underwater. And like somebody would speak to me and I knew they spoke to me and I like had to process what they were saying before I was able to respond. So it was like super slow recall, which was very, very unusual for me. Long story, pretty long, but I'm going to try to summarize it here. I tested the house for mold. It came back with really high levels and I already knew that there was mold in the house, but I needed some type of confirmation because nobody else was believing me. Everybody thought that I was being dramatic or I hated the house or whatever. And so being really sick and not being believed is a really rough place to be in. And I see it happen so much with people. And it's very unfortunate. But I started to test the house. The levels came back really bad. I took my dog and my cat to my parents to stay because I didn't want them breathing in the air. And then very shortly after, I packed up a very small bag of stuff because I was terrified of cross-contamination. And I went back to the futon. And a couple of days later, my blood pressure was through the roof. My resting heart rate was extremely high. I thought I was dying. I ended up in the hospital. They force tested me for COVID and put me in isolation and told me that nothing was wrong with me. And I was just anxious and sent me on my way. And when that happens, I mean, it's one thing to have like family members or something like that not believe you. It's a whole other thing to have medical professionals not believe you. And it's a very lonely and isolating place. So I went home and I just basically like, suffered it out. I went to my parents' house and basically just suffered it out. I would be extremely dizzy. I wasn't able to lay down. It made it worse. I wasn't able to stand up. It made it worse. Sitting down was terrible as well. And I would just cry and be so dizzy. And there was eczema on my face. And I never have skin issues. And just so many things were happening. And I didn't understand any of it. I just knew it was connected with the mold. And at that moment, I said, this is not going to happen anymore. I am going to heal myself. And so I signed up for school. I signed up to become a nutritional therapy practitioner. And, things like this take time. So I did find a naturopath in the meantime to work with. And she really helped me to get over that hump. I wasn't able to catch my breath for 4 months. And once I started working with her, a couple months later, I was able to breathe again, which was really nice, And so I was able to get over that hump with her as I was in school. Broke up with my boyfriend because he continued to not believe me, told me that there was no remediation of the house happening. And so I got rid of most of my belongings and packed up the rest of them, cleaned the rest of them, and took them back to my parents' house. Around the same time, I met my now husband, Mitch. And he was also dealing with a mold problem, which was very synchronistic, very weird, and very interesting. And so we connected on that along with a ton of other things. And now we're married. I mean, there's so much in there, but trying to keep this relatively condensed. So that all occurred. I went to school. I was continuing to work my job that I recently got fired from. And now we're here becoming a homeopath, because one thing with the nutritional therapy practitioner certification was I felt like something was missing, and I really hate the trend, I guess, of replacing allopathic medicine with supplements, which happens so much in the holistic world, in the functional medicine world, in the more like naturally based wellness world. What I see a lot of is just replacing your medications with your supplements, which is a great step, but it's still the same method. And it's still this reliance on this external force. It's still this reliance on these substances to heal your body or to maintain a level of health. And it's something that you're taking consistently. Like at one point in time, I remember I would be like, I'm going to be on binders forever because everything is toxic and I'm afraid of everything, which is a whole other conversation, like the health anxiety, the health fear. I'll talk about that in another episode. But the aspect of basically just replacement, while it helped me to get over that hump of desperation when I left the mold, it wasn't a way that I wanted to live. And I knew that there was more to the energetic aspects of life. And that's where homeopathy comes in, because homeopathy works with the vital force, the energy of the body, essentially. So we all have an energetic body. And when you only work on the physical, you're not able to touch that energetic body in the same way. So if there is, and oftentimes there is, some type of mental or physical ailment that you are experiencing, that can be caused by something in the energetic body, something with the vital force, being off, being weak, whatever it may be. And so when you're only hitting that thing with the physical, you can only take it so far. You can only take that healing so far. And it's just not far enough for a lot of people. And that's why they get better for a little bit on a supplement, but then they regress, or they don't see any changes and they had so much hope for the supplement. And it's because the energetic component of the healing is missing. And so that's where homeopathy comes into play. That's where it tackles these ailments that we express from a higher level, from that energetic level, which is where most dis-ease in the body comes from. And it's really synchronistic how I have kind of been led down this path and through this journey, because I have seen all iterations of health and healing in medicine. And I finally feel like with homeopathy, I have reached not the end point, but basically the beginning of so much more being possible. And by working on that level of the vital force, of the energetic aspect, you are then touching the physical as well. And something else that's really, really great about homeopathy is that symptoms are not typically being treated, or diseases are not typically being treated. The whole person is being treated. So if I come to you and I say, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and you're a homeopath, you're not going to say, okay, here's the remedy for Lyme disease. You might, but at the same time, you might say, what happened around the time you were diagnosed? What did the tick bite look like? How were you feeling? Was there something going on in your life? How did you react to receiving the diagnosis of the Lyme disease from the doctor? There are so many questions that can really dive deeper into what is going on and to treat the whole person and not just the name of what is displaying. Because we are, as human beings, we are so much more than the labels that allopathic medicine will place on us, or functional medicine will place on us. And I think a lot of times we get attached to those labels, and then we hold on to that as a mode of security as we are trying to heal. And with homeopathy, we remove that and we just look at you as a person, who you are, and we listen to your story. And we really get to the true root cause of the healing. So for so many years, I was preaching root cause, And I now laugh and realize that homeopathy will address those true root causes on that deeper level. And so that is where we're at right now. That is the journey thus far. And I am really excited to be here. What you can expect from this podcast is lots of talks on homeopathy, lots of talks on health and wellness in general. We're going to be diving into AI and all of my feelings and thoughts on that. Creativity and writing, which also connects with AI, food, nutrition especially, and just whatever comes up. So if you have any topics that you're interested in hearing me talk about or having me share from, you can let me know anywhere down below. Click one of those links, send me a message, send me an email, whatever it may be. I would love to hear from you. And I think that's about it. We are in a new evolution of the practice within. I'm so excited that you are here. And I think that's it. Yeah. So if you would like to work with me, though, you can book a discovery call. We can work on nutritional therapy, not homeopathy yet. In the future, that is coming. But right now, nutritional therapy. So if you have some type of food thing that you're dealing with, or your relationship with food is feeling a little wonky, we can go over the energetic aspects of food, kind of work on that relationship with food, and nail down what you specifically should be eating to align with you personally. This is a whole other episode as well, but basically, everybody is so individualized, and there's not one diet, one amount of protein per body weight that fits all. And with that, it's really important to really dive in to yourself so that you can see and feel and guide yourself down the path of recognizing what diet, what foods really work best for you, and doing so in a mindful way. So if you would like to work with me in the nutritional space, link for that is down below. 15-minute free discovery call to make sure that we are a good fit. All of the other links for Instagram, for YouTube, for the podcast, everything is also in the description down below. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate you taking the time in this world that is overfilled with so much content. And with that, I will talk to you next Wednesday.